So, Trackmania made a new statement, an official statement about the custom steering keys. So if you guys don't know, there's been a big drama about if custom action keys in the game should be allowed or shouldn't be allowed, if third-party software using, custom action keys is good or not, controller versus keyboard. There's a whole thing going on. And finally, Trackmania has made an official statement about it. So let's just go ahead and read it. Message to the community. Custom steering action keys. Message to the players from the team at Ubisoft Nadeo. There have been discussions lately about analog inputs and the use of peripheral calibration software and many questions on what is allowed or not. As you may imagine, this is a very complex issue that requires time to conclude since developments may have to be involved. A key philosophy for us has always been to try and stabilize the training of players opposed to some games that regularly change the gameplay and have more dynamic meta. So basically what they're saying is that we want the game not to change because that way you get better at the game. When players settle on learning how to play with a keyboard or a controller, it means something to us, and we always aspire to keep your training valuable. Sometimes this means making small adjustments to further close the gap in performance between different input devices. So basically what they're saying is that their goal is to have keyboard and controller to be equal, or at least as close to equal as possible. They want you to be playing with whatever peripheral you so desire. We introduced action keys since we were unable to offer a near perfect match between peripherals on new gameplay mechanics in given dev time. So basically what they're saying right here is we did not have enough time to develop the game, and therefore we added custom action keys so you guys can figure it out. Here you go, try to play the game. These provided our top keyboard players with ways to stay competitive on their preferred peripheral, while also allowing us to introduce new gameplay elements more easily. We subsequently reduced the amount of action keys from 10 to 5 to make them more accessible and have less keybinds to consider. So they reduced the amount of action keys just to have less keybinds, right? That's fine. All this is okay. Seeing the controversy about these action keys, instead of looking at the ways players try to maximize their advantage, it rather pushes us to revisit, for instance, ice bobsleigh gameplay, ideally to reach a situation where these methods would be too marginal for top performers. This is not going to happen. So it pushes us to revisit the instance of bobsleigh gameplay. Hopefully what they're going to do, what I would love they did, is just revamp bobsleigh to not have you get crazy speed boosts by doing certain steering mechanics. That would be smart. We also actively looking to revisit the development of some gameplay mechanics in aspiration to further reduce the effectiveness of both action keys and custom steering values. So they're basically saying that, on surfaces, maybe other than road, so maybe on plastic or at least on ice, mechanics like speed drifting might be less of an impact in the future. That's interesting. It will take time and resources to evaluate what is possible here, and we have already identified a specific issue on bobsleigh, so that's good. They're saying we know an issue. They might be able to fix that soon. However, if we simply fix what we have identified, it would slow down the speed, which means unbeatable records on a number of tracks. Working on a faster bobsleigh without changing all ice surfaces is also very complicated. This is why, all in all, the topic requires time and patience from everybody. I think it's good that they're not just changing it immediately, because a lot of the campaign tracks would have unbeatable world records, of course, stuff like that. So, understandable, honestly. I also saw somebody say, oh, last time you didn't care about changing it in the middle of a season. Why do you care now? People are allowed to learn from their mistakes. I feel like a lot of people complained last time. Don't be mad about them doing it now. Okay, that seems like a weird thing. When and if we make these changes that may affect gameplay, we will try our best to do this when a season change occurs, to preserve records and leaderboards the best we can. Exactly, that's what I just talked about. Really good decision. Our hope and ambition is to make different input devices close enough without requiring analog single action keys, and eventually maybe even remove action keys entirely. That would be huge. Removing action keys entirely, but I don't think the game is going to be stable at that point. Like, I think controller players are going to have an advantage, but you never know. You never know. Until then, we believe that players' transparency about what they use in various situations is important and incredibly helpful. Constructive feedback is and always will be a key component to this process. If controller players become unfairly disadvantaged, like keyboard players historically have been without action keys, in a very clear way, we will look at the disparities and find ways to address them with care. So basically what they're saying is that we might want to try to make the game more keyboard friendly, but that means that they're maybe gonna care more to like digital input. And if you're on a controller, you obviously can't do digital input. So it might be like very good for keyboard players in the future. If it gets too good, they're gonna change it again, hopefully. You never know. While we do have, okay, so this is what people have been talking about. While we do have a code of conduct that prohibits players from using external tools to gain an unfair advantage, we do not currently consider peripheral software which can be used to calibrate or enhance your device to be an external tool. We consider it an extension and therefore part of your peripheral choice. What they're saying here is that Virtual's keyboard came with software, and that software is considered a part of your peripheral, and therefore they allow it. But then they also say, however, when this software is used to drastically trivialize mechanics in Trackmania that requires skill to execute, such as creating a custom steering value, we believe this gives an unfair advantage and we do not endorse. This is weird, because they're saying dramatically trivialize mechanics in Trackmania that requires skill to execute. Driving, for example, 34% on a bobsleigh does not require skill to execute on a keyboard because it's not possible. It has nothing to do with skill. It is just straight up a specific steering range that gives you more speed. It has zero to do with skill. It is just keyboard players are, they're impossible to do it with. Like, you can't do this with a keyboard. So it doesn't trivialize any mechanics at all. So in the specific case of bobsleigh, this makes no sense, in my opinion. It doesn't trivialize anything because it's impossible to do without custom action keys. They're unable to do it. But with a controller, you can obviously do it. On a controller, I would also say, don't do it on a controller, but on a keyboard, it's impossible. And I'm not talking specifically about Virtual, I'm talking about all keyboard players. Everybody needs to be on equal footing. Keyboard players are legitimately at a disadvantage straight up because they can't do it. It has nothing to do with trivializing mechanics. Let's continue. Using personal custom key to lock your steering automatically at an optimized angle is unfairly advantageous when consistency is valued as a skill and therefore will be considered unwanted and disallowed until further notice. The problem with this is that, for example, on Midori, it is impossible to get world record without a controller. It's not possible. You cannot do it because you need that steering range. So it's only possible to do on a controller because you have all the steering ranges from 0 to 100%. What Nadeo is saying is, if you want this world record, you better buy a controller. Buy a controller, there's nothing else you can do. Sucks to be you if you're a keyboard player. They're saying every keyboard player. This has not necessarily anything to do with Virtual. This is about the fact that keyboard players cannot do this now. A key element to take into account and consider from our side is the question if we can detect unwanted behaviors. In that respect, we believe that no one is really looking forward to never-ending battle of hide and seek on these subjects. What constitutes an unfair advantage and identifying use of this method for now will remain at the discretion and judgment of our moderation team. So basically what they're saying is that we're not gonna tell you what constitutes an unfair advantage. They're not gonna tell you. We have an unfair advantage here. We're not going to tell you what you're doing is an unfair advantage or not. We're just going to remove it at our discretion. We're not going to talk about what is unfair or not. We're just going to have to remove it if we feel like it's unfair. And identifying the use of this method for now will remain at the discretion. So basically, they're not going to tell you if it's unfair. They're just going to remove it at their discretion. It is how it is. I guess if that's how they want to do it, that's how they want to do it. We can't really do much about it. We will not sanction players or records for this retroactively, as we agree that this has been a very difficult topic without clear rulings before. Players who may have used this method before this article are not considered to have been cheating, but this article does serve as a warning going forward. Basically, what they're saying is that, well, in specific regards to people like Virtual and a lot of other people that has also used stuff like this and DX tweak and stuff, don't do it anymore for custom inputs. That's basically it. It's considered cheating now. Or at least this makes me think that it's considered cheating from now on. On a side note, all this could have been connected with anti-cheat systems that constrains and prevents us from disclosing everything. We have been working for the past months on some significant big steps on our anti-cheat. That's good. Yes. I'm assuming once they reveal some grand anti-cheat that they might be working on, we hopefully have some more clear rulings instead of saying at our discretion. We can look forward to that. At least they're saying right here, they're stating that they're actively working on anti-cheat or on a better version of anti-cheat. And once they do that, we're going to have some more clear rulings, I think. So that's great. As we see Trackmania as the racing game, We always aspire to have an equal playing field for all our players. We have managed to create an environment thus far in which different input devices perform almost similarly, and we take pride in this. We will continue to try and further close the gaps where they exist. I think it's impossible to close the gaps perfectly. I think there's always going to be peripherals that are better for certain maps than other maps, and if you want to be the best world record haver on a lot of maps, you might have to learn multiple peripherals, but that's fair. I feel like that's okay. I'm not really against that. We ask our players to remain respectful towards each other when discussing these topics. The regulations surrounding these specific issues did not yet exist before today, and we are appreciative of having brought this to our attention in pursuit of integrity in our competitive environment and leaderboards. So basically what they're saying is, yeah, we didn't really have good rulings before. Thank you for bringing it up. Seems about right. So that's good. Do not hesitate to contact us in case of any questions, and please use the proper channels for reports of unwanted behaviors. Thank you for your patience and understanding, and see you on the tracks, the team at Ubisoft Nadeo. Basically, what I take away from this is that custom action keys are not allowed anymore. They were allowed before, but going forward, they're not going to be. They're working on an anti-cheat so that they can give us more clear rulings. As of right now, there's not going to be super clear rulings. They're just asking you not to use custom action keys. Certain maps are not going to be possible to get world record with a keyboard on. Specifically bobsleigh maps, it's not possible. You got to play with a keyboard and a controller. It is what it is. And I think that's the end. I think that's the end of everything. Okay, so looking forward to the future. Looking forward to more updates from Nadeo. All in all, I think I'm just happy they made a statement. So that's great. 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10. Very nice.